Russia launches precise attack on Ukrainian missile launchers and targets, igniting flames. Russia issues a stern warning to those involved if the EU transfers frozen assets to Ukraine. Argentina strikes a blow at Russia, warns of conflict in the next 10 days. The US is concerned about the possibility of military actions outside of space. French attack helicopters shoot down a UAV over the Red Sea. Recently, these are the notable contents in the program. We invite you to the detailed content. After the Ukrainian armed forces launched missiles at the Ben Group, a salvo missile system, the Ukrainian fan page immediately relocated. However, the Ukrainian missile system was detected and attacked by the Russian military, resulting in its destruction. Additionally, according to the Rapuria direction, the Russian military targeted a Ukrainian military convoy, causing columns of smoke to rise 10 meters high. Meanwhile, in the Sun region, the Russian military also launched attacks on multiple Ukrainian positions. On March 2nd, at the Kakop area, the VA-BIA salvo missile system was used by the Utana armed forces to attack and destroy the Benko burning. The VA-BIA salvo missile system of Ukraine carried out an attack on Benkos at around 12:30 Moscow time on March 20th in the forest area between the settlements of Nyaya, Pisaripka, and Luiska. This attack occurred after the Russian air defense shot down 13 missiles fired from the VA-BIA system. These 13 missiles were intercepted by the Russian military at 11:30 Moscow time on the same day. The VA-BIA system is an improved version of the Soviet BM-21 Grad, produced in the Czech Republic and based on the Tatra chassis. It is known that the Czech Republic has provided some of these systems to Utina, including the 6th and 110th Mechanized Brigades of the Utina Armed Forces, which are currently using these systems. Earlier, images of an M1A1 Abrams tank destroyed in the northern military region were also released. The video footage showed the moment an M1A1 Abrams tank manufactured by the United States and used by Ukraine was destroyed. This tank had been destroyed since February in military operations, but images of the incident have only recently been released. This is the first M1A1 Abrams tank produced by the United States to be destroyed in Ukraine. The video shows the tank Amadon moving along a rural road when it was attacked by a drone, which struck the tank's turret, causing it to immediately catch fire. The attack occurred in the nearby area of Adika and was the result of actions by a drone unit. It should be noted that after this event, 2 more American tanks were destroyed. In another development, according to the Napolia direction, the Russian military carried out an attack on a Ukrainian military convoy. The attack was recorded and shared on the Telegram channel of the Napolia Front. The video shows the aftermath of the attack, in which the armored vehicles of the Ukrainian armed forces were hit and engulfed in flames. This video was recorded by a reconnaissance drone, and after the attack, a large explosion occurred, accompanied by a tall column of fire and smoke, resembling a mushroom cloud. According to reports from the front, the Utena armed forces attempted a counterattack but were unsuccessful, with many of Utena's assets being destroyed. Utinu's efforts to mobilize reserves for battle were also disrupted. Additionally, in the Kherson area on the riverbank, the Russian military also deployed attacks on multiple positions of the Ukrainian forces. According to the governor of the Villemia-Sando region, the attacks targeted drone control groups in the settlements of Iranovka and Antonovka, a mobile gun at Tokhovka, and a radar station in the village of Verolvos. Sando stated that these targets were used to attack civilian facilities in the Dodivpi River area. The Russian embassy in Washington recently stated that the United States unfairly accused Russia of attempting to persuade independent Latin American countries to ally with Russia against the U.S. They expressed their disagreement with the U.S.'s efforts to draw Latin American countries towards themselves and involve the capitals of these countries in gambling. The Russian embassy highlighted the surprising nature of these allegations, considering the destruction of Abrams tanks and other equipment in military operations. Russian diplomats called on the Washington authorities to stop regarding Latin American and Caribbean countries as their backyard. They emphasized that it was time for the U.S. to accept that this region was making independent decisions, including strengthening mutually beneficial relations with Russia. On March 19th, speaking at the Atlantic Council in Washington, Laura Rich Jackson urged Latin American countries to consider their economic relations with Russia and existing agreements in the military technical field. Earlier in January, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov accused Western powers of quietly providing weapons manufactured by Russia to Ukraine. He did not specify which countries were involved, but asserted that Russia would continue to demand compliance with all relevant international obligations regarding arms transfers. Lavrov explained that when a foreign country legally purchases weapons from Russia, the shipments are accompanied by certain documents, including end-user certificates. According to these certificates, the recipient of the weapons is not allowed to resell or transfer them without the consent of the supplying country. Furthermore, Lavrov announced that Russian forces would respond to the West's transfer of long-range weapons to Ukraine by attempting to push Ukrainian forces away from the Russian border to create a safe buffer zone. He stated that they were currently working on pushing back the Ukrainian artillery to a distance that no longer posed a threat to their territory. Lavrov also accused the West of lying about Russia's refusal to negotiate on the issue of Ukraine. He alleged that the West was trying to turn Moldova and former Soviet countries in Central Asia against Russia, while the U.S. and other Western countries claimed that Russia was not serious about negotiating an end to the conflict. On March 20th, the European Commission proposed to transfer €2.53 billion to Ukraine, equivalent to $2.7 to $3.3 billion USD, from assets frozen in Europe's central bank due to the conflict in Ukraine. According to the proposal, 90% of this amount will be transferred to the European Peace Facility, EPF, to purchase weapons for Ukraine, while the remaining portion will be used for recovery and reconstruction purposes. The exact amount that EPF will receive annually will depend on global interest rates, as the profits and interest from $210 billion, equivalent to $227 billion USD, in assets of the Central Bank of Russia held in various currencies in 27 European Union (EU) member states, will contribute to this fund. In addition to these profits, Ukraine will also receive a 25% tax on profits from Russian assets, amounting to €1.7 billion, equivalent to $1.84 billion USD in 2024, with $1.5 billion, equivalent to $1.62 billion USD, to be paid this year. Therefore, the total financial contribution to Ukraine from frozen Russian assets in the EU will reach $4 to $4.5 billion, equivalent to $4.3 to $4.8 billion USD in 2024 after the proposal is approved by EU governments. The profits will be transferred to Ukraine twice a year, with the first transfer scheduled for July. Following this proposal by the EU, Russia immediately objected. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov stated that Russia would prosecute those involved for up to 10 years if the EU transferred frozen Russian assets to Ukraine. Specifically, Peskov emphasized that Europe was aware of the damage such decisions would cause to their economy, image, and reputation as reliable guarantors of property rights. He argued that the EU's statement was akin to actions undermining the legal foundations of European and international law, warning that individuals involved in such decisions would undoubtedly face prosecution for many years. When asked about the proposal, Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova described it as robbery, asserting that Moscow would retaliate if the West used frozen Russian assets. Anton Siluanov, Russia's finance minister, had previously warned in December last year that Moscow would take reciprocal action against foreign assets in Russia if the EU transferred frozen assets to Ukraine. In a video statement released on March 19th, Prime Minister of Armenia, Nikon Batian, warned that Armenia might face a conflict with Isaac Byzantium by the end of this weekend if it does not negotiate with Baku and return the 4 villages of Isaac Biden that Yerevan has held since the 1990s, with Russia being alleged to have a special role. Meanwhile, Ayapizan stated that the demand for Armenia to return the land is a prerequisite and necessary condition for advancing towards a peace agreement to end the 30-year conflict in the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region. Previously, in September last year, Yerevan suffered heavy losses when Azerbaijani forces launched a blitz attack, recapturing Nagorno-Karabakh, leading nearly all of the 100,000 ethnic Armenian residents in the area to flee to Armenia's official territory. Prime Minister Pashinyan then criticized Russia for causing Armenia's setbacks by not intervening to stop Ayapizan's actions, which is also one of the reasons why Yerevan feels disappointed with Russia. Starting from March 30th, almost all banks in Armenia will cease accepting Russian Mir payment cards. The use of Mir cards for non-cash payments at post terminals and cash withdrawals from ATMs will be denied. The move by Armenia to suddenly boycott Russian Mir cards is seen as a bold step in Yerevan's public opposition to Moscow, while dealing a harsh blow to the system of payments that Russia has built over the past 8 years to avoid sanctions. According to analysts, Armenia's move stems from the country's risk of falling under the U.S. Treasury's secondary sanctions. The decision by Armenia to unexpectedly boycott Russian Mir cards is considered a bold follow-up move by Yerevan in openly opposing Moscow, while dealing a harsh blow to the system of payments that Russia has built over the past 8 years to avoid sanctions. In response to Armenia's actions, the Russian Foreign Ministry issued a statement on March 19th, with spokeswoman Maria Zakharova affirming that the extent to which the new leaders of the European Union, NATO, and Washington have taken this issue is noteworthy. It should be noted that this statement is not related to Russia. It is the prerogative of the local authorities and the result of consultations with the West regarding Armenia's decision to stop accepting Mir cards. Meanwhile, Anatoly Asko, the head of Russia's National Puma Commission on Financial Markets, emphasized that Armenia's decision will be a significant loss for the country and its people. Additionally, in a separate development, the Ukrainian defense minister announced that additional ammunition and anti-aircraft missiles will be provided to the Ukrainian armed forces. The meeting, held as part of the RAM-STEN format, demonstrated the solidarity and action of the alliance of partner countries in assisting Ukraine. The defense minister also discussed Ukraine's plans for 2024, including the construction of enhanced air defense infrastructure, provision of electronic warfare equipment, and long-range weapons. The lack of anti-aircraft missiles in Ukraine has created conditions for Russian airstrikes. However, in the coming period, after Ukraine has weathered the crisis and received additional missiles for its air defense systems, Ukrainian forces may improve the situation or even turn the tide, reclaiming the skies and striking thunderbolts at the Russian Air Force. Recently, President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine declared that the Ukrainian air defense forces would become the backbone of the air defense shield for all of Europe. He emphasized that Ukraine could save thousands of lives and move closer to achieving a complete sky shield. Zelensky called on Western allies to continue supporting air defense systems. In a Facebook post, Zelensky stated that all cities and villages in Ukraine must be protected, forming the basis for a comprehensive air defense shield for the entire continent. He warned of Russia's ongoing conflict targeting normal cities and villages in Ukraine using drones, anti-aircraft missiles, and guided bombs. However, the Ukrainian military has demonstrated its ability to effectively shoot down drones, missiles, or any weapons deployed by Russia during attacks. Zelensky called for continued support for air defense systems, emphasizing that they should be used for their intended purpose of protecting people's lives. Previously, in February, Zelensky announced that Ukraine had received 2 new air defense systems from Western allies, which could counter any airborne threat. Zelensky did not disclose the specific type of missile shield, but he has praised the Padius air defense system provided by the United States, stating that it is crucial for protecting Ukraine from remote attacks by Russia. He also mentioned that additional Padius systems would be delivered in the coming winter, although the exact number and timing were not disclosed. Enhancing air defense is a top priority for Ukraine to protect cities, towns, and infrastructure from missile and drone attacks by Russia. On March 19th, German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius announced a 500,000 euro aid package, equivalent to USD 542,000 for Ukraine. Speaking to reporters on the sidelines of negotiations with the U.S. and other allies at Ramstein Air Base, Minister Pistorius emphasized, once again, we are providing an aid package worth nearly €500 million. This package includes 10,000 rounds of ammunition. He also affirmed that the U.S. remains a reliable partner regarding aid to Ukraine. Also on March 19th, German Chancellor Olafsson defended the decision not to transfer long-range Taurus missiles to Kyiv. Speaking at a conference in Berlin, Prime Minister Saul also stressed that Germany is the largest European supporter of Ukraine, having provided or committed to providing €28 billion in aid to the government of Ukraine. Germany has transferred almost all types of lethal weapons to Ukraine, such as battle tanks, artillery, Patriot missiles, and the modern Iraset air defense missiles. The German leader stated that all these decisions were made cautiously and in coordination with allies. The aid for Taurus missiles for Ukraine has been a divisive issue within Germany recently. Chancellor Olafsson, a member of the Social Democratic Party SPD, ruled out transferring the missiles at the moment, stating that the Taurus's range is too far and Germany could be directly or indirectly dragged into the conflict if they were supplied. However, the Christian Democratic Union, CDU, and the Christian Social Union, CSU, support the idea and are conducting a series of votes in the Bundestag to recommend providing Taurus missiles. From both sides of the political spectrum, the Greens and the SPD are also voicing support for the idea or some alternative proposals regarding arms exchanges with the United Kingdom. Foreign Minister David Cameron, who recently visited Berlin, seems to have opened a door for an alternative to the Taurus missile proposal. In an interview with the German newspaper Süddeutsche Zeitung, he suggested that Berlin could send Taurus missiles to the UK in exchange for the UK sending additional short-range Stone Shadow missiles to Ukraine. Taurus is a long-range cruise missile produced by a German-Swedish partnership capable of striking targets over 500 kilometers away. It can attack deep targets inside Russian territory and carries a warhead weighing up to 480 kilograms. It can hit individual targets such as tanks, radar stations, missile launchers, and larger targets such as military convoys and command centers. Furthermore, the missile does not need to enter the opponent's airspace. After several modifications, Taurus is equipped with the latest technical combinations, automatic positioning systems, target identification devices, and missile defense trap radiation sensors. It is one of the most advanced cruise missiles produced in Europe, surpassing even some criteria compared to those of the UK and France. In some aspects, such as range, power, and multi-layer target designation, it is superior. Another advantage of Taurus is that it can fly at a height of only 35 meters, making it virtually undetectable by radar systems. On March 20th, Russia announced that its troops are pushing back Ukrainian forces, and Moscow will bolster its military strength by adding 2 Army Corps and 10 new divisions this year. Reuters reported that the Russian defense minister will deliver a speech to senior generals, stating that Russian forces continue to force opponents to leave their positions. The United States and satellite countries are extremely concerned about the success of Russian armed forces in the military area, and combined Russian groups will continue to intensify attacks on enemy targets. Additionally, according to the Russian defense minister, Russia has established a 6th Army Corps, a mechanized rifle division, a river fleet, and a river-based corps. Russia will also establish 2 mixed arms Army Corps and 14 divisions, and continue to improve the combat structure and strength of the Russian military to match emerging threats to the country's security. Meanwhile, Western intelligence agencies believe that the conflict could enter a decisive phase, as Ukraine needs more Western allies to provide additional weapons. The U.S. Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, previously stated that Ukraine's survival is threatened. Al Jazeera, based in Qatar, reported on March 18th that Russia appears to be prepared to bolster its offensive military forces after President Vladimir Putin's re-election, leaving Kyiv with no other choice but to respond in a similar manner. In a conflict that is occurring far from the front lines, Ukrainian lawmakers are debating a bill that could determine the fate of their country in the conflict with Russia. This bill allows for the mobilization of up to 500,000 new troops, equivalent to a 50% increase in Ukraine's regular military forces. This could help Ukraine finally break the siege of Russian forces in the southern regions and force the Kremlin to negotiate on Kyiv's terms. After Russia launched its military plans against Ukraine on February 24, 2022, Kyiv mobilized men over the age of 27 to join the military. However, only a third of the millions of men and women wearing military uniforms are currently engaged in combat against 400,000 to 600,000 Russian soldiers, according to KF estimates. The rest of Ukraine's personnel serve in support roles, including over 100,000 deployed to the northern border with Belarus, a region previously used by Moscow as a springboard for attacks. Ukraine remains relatively calm for now, but Kyiv wants to prevent the reoccurrence of past scenarios. A non-pilot aircraft squadron commander from Russia, nicknamed Gianoya, revealed that the Untina military has reduced activities in the Alaska region as of March 20th. Gianoya stated, "Their activities have significantly decreased since we gained control of Alaska. They resist, but they are no longer as strong as before. Their morale is declining." Igo Kimakuki, an advisor to the head of the People's Republic, self-proclaimed Danet, told TAT earlier that the Russian military has established control over the supply lines of Utina, with forces close to Edika. Earlier this month, on March 3rd, the Ukrainian military claimed to have repelled Russian forces at Karashno-Kraka in a rare counterattack, following 7 defeats at the Edika stronghold. Maxim Join, deputy commander of the BA Ukrainian Strike Brigade, announced that Brigade BA successfully pushed the enemy out of Karashno-Kraka. The Russian military did not surrender, but was disabled in the houses they occupied. Brigade BA stated that the city of Karashno-Kraka had previously been attacked and controlled by Russian forces since February 27th, after Ukraine lost at the nearby Adika stronghold. In just a few days, Russian units prepared for a long-term defense phase in Karashno-Kraka. Jordan called the expulsion of Russian forces from Karashno-Kraka a counterattack, following recent consecutive defeats by Ukraine at Adika and many nearby residential areas. After capturing the stronghold of Adika, Russian forces launched multiple offensives along the 1,000 kilometers front. This effort by Russia may aim to strain Ukrainian forces, which are facing shortages of weapons, ammunition, and being hit hard in morale due to the loss of Adika. On the Russian side, according to Alexander Godiev, spokesperson for the Eastern Combat Group of the Russian military, their units have improved frontline positions, repelling 2 separate counterattacks from the Ukrainian forces near settlements. They also eliminated a group of reserve soldiers from the 108th Territorial Defense Brigade of the GF near the Minoza settlement. The spokesperson added that the Eastern Combat Group successfully thwarted enemy advance efforts near settlements with artillery, heavy machine guns, and airstrikes, destroying strongholds and causing significant casualties to the 8th Mechanized Infantry Brigade and the 128th Territorial Defense Brigade of Ukraine near Satyos and Staromayoskaz settlements. The Ukrainian forces have recently utilized guided munitions as warheads for unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, enhancing their ability to inflict damage when attacking enemy infantry. Prior to this, Ukraine's reconnaissance units released footage showing the use of small UAVs to attack a position held by Russian soldiers on the front line. In the video, the Ukrainian UAV reconnaissance team identified Russian soldiers hiding beside a tree in an open field and relayed the coordinates to the deployed UAV armed with guided munitions. However, instead of directly engaging the target, the Ukrainian UAV detonated above, creating numerous fragments falling to the ground. This tactic demonstrates Ukraine's utilization of UAVs armed with warhead-equipped guided munitions to significantly increase their combat effectiveness against enemy infantry. Military expert David Hambling of Forbes suggests that these UAVs resemble 18A1 Claymore anti-personnel mines, known for their rectangular curved shape and forward-facing concave surface containing C4 explosive. When detonated, they release approximately 700 metal balls in a 60-degree fan-shaped pattern, effectively targeting enemies within a range of about 50 meters. This tactic presents a challenge for enemy infantry as they can't avoid the blast easily. While UAVs armed with RPG warheads can effectively attack heavy vehicles, such as tanks or armored vehicles, engaging infantry poses difficulties as they can actively maneuver to evade attacks. Additionally, the activation mechanism of Claymore-type directional mines makes them harder to evade, as they don't require direct contact with the target to detonate. Currently, both Russia and Ukraine possess a significant number of UAVs and are actively increasing production, with Ukraine expected to produce approximately 1,000 UAVs independently, with additional support from Western countries. Recently, the Russian Ministry of Defense reported on the progress of military operations in Ukraine. Along the front lines, units from the Russian Expeditionary Force have gained more advantageous positions, causing losses to the Armed Forces of Ukraine, AFU, and improving the situation along the battlefront. Russian forces have defeated the formations of the 7th, 9th, and 118th AU Mechanized Infantry Divisions near Novomykhailivka and Horlivka. Claimed to be self-proclaimed by the Donetsk People's Republic, DPR, neutralizing over 215 Ukrainian soldiers, 2 tanks, 2 infantry fighting vehicles, and 4 motor vehicles during counter-battery fire. Additionally, in southern Donetsk Oblast, units from the Russian Eastern Group inflicted damage to enemy artillery and repelled 2 counterattacks by the 72nd AFU Mechanized Brigade, resulting in the loss of 130 Ukrainian personnel, 1 tank, 2 infantry fighting vehicles, 5 motor vehicles, and a Grad-type self-propelled artillery system. Russian forces also targeted personnel and equipment of the AFU in one of 14 areas, shooting down 104 Ukrainian drones and 8 reconnaissance balloons. In the direction of Adiha, units from the Russian Center Group took control of Alagka town and improved the situation along the battle line opposite Hranitne. Ukraine's Deputy Minister of Defense noted that the consumption rate of artillery shells on the battlefield since the beginning of 2024 has been 7-1 in favor of Russia. He attributed this to not only Moscow's own production, but also significant support from North Korea. Moreover, certain ammunition reserves of Ukraine are critically low. The deputy minister highlighted Russia's air superiority, calling for the supply of F-16 fighters to Ukraine to counter this challenge. He also mentioned that since the beginning of the year, Russian aircraft have dropped over 3,500 bombs on their positions, a 16-fold increase compared to 2023. The United States is expressing concerns about China's space activities, fearing that Washington's satellites could be targeted by assets on the moon. Last month, the White House also accused Russia of seeking to develop anti-satellite weapons, but Moscow has yet to respond to this issue. General Anthony Masteri, commander of the U.S. Space Force, USF, in the Indo-Pacific region, stated earlier this week that he wants to explore potential military attacks from China's lunar exploration program. He mentioned terms like ex-geo and cis-luna, referring to space beyond geosynchronous orbit, approximately 35,000 kilometers above Earth's surface, and the area between Earth and the Moon, respectively. General Masteri's primary concern remains the possibility of conflicts on Earth, but emphasized the need to study China's lunar strategy. He expressed worries about potential threats to satellite operations from lunar-based assets and called for immediate research into China's lunar intentions. General Masteri highlighted the importance of understanding these new orbital dynamics and their implications for satellite security. The United States has deployed thousands of satellites for civilian and military purposes in Earth's orbit and launched satellites to monitor missile threats from space. Recent warnings from U.S. officials have raised concerns about China's military activities in space. General Stephen Oy, head of the U.S. Space Command, stated at a congressional hearing in February that China's military capabilities in space are rapidly evolving. However, China has denied these allegations, accusing the U.S. of using them as a pretext to expand its own military strength. Furthermore, the White House accused Russia of developing anti-satellite weapons deployable in space. However, it clarified that the immediate threat is not yet confirmed. John Kirby, National Security Council member, confirmed Russia's development of anti-satellite capabilities, but stated that they have not been deployed. Concerns have been raised about the potential dangers these weapons pose to astronauts in low Earth orbit and disruptions to both military and civilian satellite operations. Following these concerns, President Joe Biden instructed officials to engage with Russia on this matter, although Moscow has not yet responded. The incident involving an unmanned aerial vehicle, surveilled by the U.S. River Intelligence, making an emergency landing on Polish territory, has garnered significant attention. According to the Russian Weibun publication, the cause of the incident was attributed to the impact of the Russian dual-use electronic warfare systems, Karasuka-2 and Karasuka-4. These systems have the capability to disrupt GPS signals and jam the communication systems of the unmanned aircraft. International media reported that the MQ-9 Reaper unmanned aerial vehicle was conducting reconnaissance missions to detect Russian military positions along the border with the Kaliningrad region. However, the Russian Karasuka-2 electronic warfare system disrupted the operations of the positioning equipment, followed by Karasuka-4, which further interfered with radar systems and target designation communication using target-directed beam clusters. As a result, the unmanned aircraft lost contact with its controllers and was forced to make an emergency landing on Polish territory. Russian military experts added that the flight of the unmanned aircraft ended with an emergency landing at the air base in Myroslavet, where it took off autonomously without direct control from the operators. The Polish Ministry of Defense stated that there were no casualties in the incident, and an investigation into the cause of the incident is underway. The MQ-9 Reaper, designated as a General Atomics-produced unmanned aerial vehicle for the U.S. Air Force, is a multi-role drone. While the MQ-9 is the ninth order of the Reaper series in the U.S. UAV lineup, it is the first reconnaissance-focused UAV designed for long-endurance operations at high altitudes. The MQ-9 Reaper has a length of 11 meters, a wingspan of 20.1 meters, a payload capacity of 2.2 tons, a maximum speed of 400.82 km per hour, and a range of 1,802 kilometers. The UAV can be used for intelligence gathering, search and rescue operations, and precision strikes on ground and airborne targets. Additionally, the MQ-9's sensor suite includes a multispectral targeting system with a color television, infrared, and laser rangefinder, combined with synthetic aperture radar to create 3D terrain images and target identification. According to a report from the U.S. Congressional Research Service, each MQ-9 Reaper UAV costs approximately $30 million, with the production facility located in Myroslav, which has been operational since March 2019. At the end of December 2023, the White House confirmed the transfer of Patriot missiles by the Japanese government to the United States. Officials from Japan believe that transferring the Patriot missiles will contribute to enhancing Japan's security and peace in the Indo-Pacific region. Akira Moto, the Japanese ambassador to Russia, later stated that the Patriot missiles had been transferred from Japan to the United States but were not used in Ukraine. Sergei Jacki, the director of the Asian Department at the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, mentioned that in December 2023, the Japanese government under Prime Minister Fumio Kishida relaxed its restrictions on military equipment exports. Russia had directly warned Japan through its embassy in Moscow about the potential consequences of this decision. In late 2023, Russia also warned about the negative effects of exporting lethal weapons from Japan to the United States on regional security and the world. According to Maria Zakharova, a spokesperson for the Russian Foreign Ministry, there is a possibility that the Patriot missiles sold by Japan to the U.S. could be transferred to Ukraine, as with many other types of weapons. The potential scenario of Japanese missiles falling into the hands of the Ukrainian military could have serious implications for bilateral relations between Moscow and Tokyo. In a related development, Russia recently announced that it had shot down a projectile launched from Ukraine's Patriot system in the border region of Belgorod. However, Russia did not specify the circumstances leading to the interception incident. The Russian Ministry of Defense stated that its air defense units had destroyed an S-200 missile aimed at the Kos province and intercepted a projectile from the Patriot air defense system in the Belgorod region. Belgrade province is located in western Russia, adjacent to the provinces of Caucasia and northeastern Ukraine. Following the incident, Russia did not provide visual evidence to support its claims, nor did it specify which weapons were used to shoot down the Patriot missile. This type of weapon has been increasingly used by Ukraine to counter Russian airstrikes, notably with the Su-34 bombers. Ukrainian officials have not commented on the information. While the Patriot system was expected to significantly alter the airspace dynamics in Ukraine due to its superior combat capabilities compared to Western-provided air defense systems, experts warn that the Patriots are not a panacea for Ukraine's air defense and remain a top priority target for the Russian military. President Vladimir have recently ordered the Federal Security Service, FSB, to enhance counterterrorism efforts against powerful and dangerous adversaries. Putin stated in a meeting with the FSB that he requested them, along with other security and law enforcement agencies, under the coordination of the Counterterrorism Commission, to intensify counterterrorism efforts in all directions. He emphasized that our adversaries are strong and dangerous, possessing abundant information, technical capabilities, and financial resources. The president noted that we are aware of their capabilities, including intelligence methods and terrorist tactics. He cited a blatant terrorist attack targeting the gas pipeline in the Baltic Sea and stated that they are prepared to do anything. On March 19th, President Putin requested the FSB to identify and punish the gunmen of the Ukrainian pro-government militia near the border. He stressed that we must not forget these traitors and must identify and punish them at all times and places. According to the Kremlin, all attempts to infiltrate Russian territory by the Ukrainian pro-government forces have failed. President Putin further stated that these gunmen must suffer severe losses, as they are considered assets by foreign forces. This is the outcome they deserve. Recently, Ukrainian pro-government groups, including the Free Russian Corps, FRC, Siberian Battalion, and Russian Volunteer Corps, RVC, declared control over 2 villages near the border. However, the Russian Defense Ministry confirmed that border guards and the FSB had thwarted the raids, inflicting significant damage on the adversaries. Russia holds Ukraine responsible for the series of incursions by these pro-government militia groups, while artillery attacks and border infiltrations may force Russia to disperse its forces to counter them, weakening security in the region and posing challenges for Moscow. The Russian military has also achieved numerous victories in eastern Ukraine, most recently in the Alaska Front, where Central Army units have gained control over the village of Olyuka. This is the latest success in a string of victories, including the seizure of Alaska a month ago, amid the challenging situation on various conflict fronts. Russia responds to attacks and incursions into its border territories with increasing frequency. Recent moves by NATO leaders indicate that Georgia and Azerbaijan could become NATO outposts behind Russia's back. According to Russian media, the desires of the North Atlantic Military Alliance to stir up instability near the border are becoming increasingly clear in the wake of recent actions by NATO leaders. As reported by Reporter, following Georgia's alignment with Western interests, NATO Secretary-General Tortenbuks embarked on a tour to the capitals of the republics. Transcaucasian seems to be part of a strategy to continue expanding eastward, establishing footholds behind Russia. On the 18th of March, the head of the alliance held bilateral meetings in Tbilisi, after which he declared readiness to support Georgia's NATO accession path. NATO leaders stated that the alliance plans to enhance cooperation with Georgia and do not exclude the possibility of admitting Belarus to the alliance. Prior to this, the Secretary-General of NATO visited Baku, the capital of Azerbaijan, where he outlined the prospects for Georgia and Azerbaijan to achieve long-term peace with U.S. support. Next, the head of NATO plans to visit Yerevan, where he is expected to present a similar promising scenario for Azerbaijan, akin to what was outlined in Baku. Political scientist Steve Pan-Danielian from Azerbaijan believes that Tortenbuk is attempting to solidify NATO's presence in the region and engage in a geopolitical game with Russia, making Yerevan a bargaining chip and creating instability in Russia's backyard. In a related development, the German intelligence agency has prepared an analysis for the government on the military threat from Russia, predicting that from 2026 onwards, Moscow may attack the territories of NATO member countries. This could prompt Russia to double its military strength in the next 5 years, especially in conventional weapons. However, Business Insider reports that NATO headquarters shares concerns about Russia's increasing military capabilities and the potential for future confrontation, but does not necessarily see it leading to conflict. Citing assessments from U.S. intelligence agencies, Business Insider suggests that there is no immediate risk of a Russian attack on NATO and believes that Russian armed forces will need an additional 58 years to fully restore their military strength lost in the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin warned the West that direct conflict between Russia and the U.S.-led North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, would mean the planet is just one step away from World War III. In the election campaign on March 19th in the United States, President Joe Biden used the phrase, "Bring America back to greatness," which former President Donald Trump used as a slogan. According to Reuters, President Joe Biden emphasized plans to reduce housing costs at various stops during the campaign across Nevada. Biden targeted high rent prices and criticized the policies of his Republican opponent, Donald Trump. President Biden also proposed a minimum tax for billionaires and declared that we can invest in things that bring America back to greatness, such as childcare. He visited Arizona, another state that could play a crucial role in the upcoming presidential election in November this year. According to the latest polls by Reuters, Biden is leading Trump by 1 percentage point among registered voters. Biden has visited multiple stops in various states since harshly criticizing Trump's policies in his State of the Union message earlier this month. The president also outlined many ideas that he hopes to implement if re-elected for a second term in this year's re-election campaign. Biden's motto is that we can get the job done, sounding more like a commitment from a builder than political rhetoric. However, both current and former advisors to the president believe that Bidenomics resembles an economic revolution in the United States. This revolution will take shape if Biden continues to lead the White House for a second term. There are two scenarios that could unfold in Biden's second term. First, if the Republican Party retains control of either the House or the Senate, or both, Biden's focus will be on protecting his legislative achievements. While the Republican Party may not be able to repeal Biden's investment packages, they could obstruct them. Thus, if Congress refuses to cooperate, the actual money available will be tighter. This could lead to a reduction in investment in recent years, and manufacturers may struggle to survive due to expensive input costs. But Biden will have some leverage. Many large tax cuts passed during Donald Trump's presidency will expire by the end of 2025. If Republicans want to extend them to avoid a sharp tax increase, they may have to negotiate with Biden by supporting some of the president's priorities, including industrial subsidies. Regardless of the budgetary impact in the short term, to continue running the world's largest economy, Biden must persuade Americans as they prepare for the upcoming general election. He emphasized that people have started to feel better about the economy, which will be an important issue for them in the November election. Former President of the United States, Donald Trump, on March 18th, expressed the view that there is a need to promote a peace agreement to end the conflict in Ukraine if he is re-elected. According to Russia's RT, in an interview broadcast in the U.S., Trump said that negotiations are the only way to prevent conflicts in Europe. He declared that both Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky must be brought together to achieve this goal. Trump stated, "I will say you have to do it. You have to do it, and you will do it. I will bring them together to make a deal." Trump further mentioned his understanding of Putin and Zelensky and asserted that he knows what needs to be said to ensure a peace agreement is signed. Comparing the conflict in Ukraine to a chess game or a card game, Trump emphasized that he knows how to make the right moves. He criticized President Joe Biden for not preventing the conflict from the beginning, stating that Biden does not know how to play chess and has been wrong to blame Russia entirely for the conflict. Trump stated, "Conflict never would have happened. I spoke about Ukraine with Putin. He didn't do that when I was in office." This is not the first time Trump has called on parties to reach a peace agreement to end the conflict in Ukraine. This view was first expressed by Trump in May 2023. Trump, currently a Republican Party candidate for the U.S. presidential election, commented on President Zelensky, describing him as one of the greatest businessmen who always helps Ukraine receive large sums of money whenever he visits the U.S. During a campaign event in Vandalia, Ohio last week, Trump reiterated his views on maintaining support for Ukraine, emphasizing that the U.S. should lend money to Ukraine rather than provide free assistance. He stated, "We should lend money to Ukraine. We shouldn't send them money. If they get over the hump, they're going to have to pay us back." Trump also called for greater support for Ukraine from NATO member countries, suggesting that the U.S. is spending too much money on NATO. However, in a recent interview with Fox News, Donald Trump stated that as president, he maintained a good personal relationship with Russian leader Vladimir Putin. He expressed confidence that if he were in the White House in 2022, Russia would never attack Ukraine. Trump left the White House on January 20th, 2021, after losing to Biden in the presidential election. He stated, "I get along with everybody, including Putin and others. It's good to get along with people." Trump also mentioned his good personal relationships with Chinese President Xi Jinping and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Meanwhile, Switzerland recently announced its readiness to host a peace conference to discuss the issue of Ukraine and may invite Russia to attend. However, Ukraine appears to be opposed to Russia's participation. The situation in the Middle East has escalated, with France's military announcing the pursuit and subsequent shooting down of a UAV by a helicopter in the Red Sea. The video footage captured by the helicopter's electronic optical sensor showed a French military helicopter flying alongside an unidentified cargo ship before pursuing and continuously monitoring a UAE, United Arab Emirates aircraft flying low over the sea. The French Ministry of Defense stated that during the mission to protect the cargo ship as part of the Atalanta campaign in the Red Sea on March 20th, a French Navy helicopter from a frigate shot down an unmanned aerial vehicle, UAV, that posed a threat to commercial maritime traffic. This incident marks the first time a Western military helicopter has engaged a UAE aircraft in the Red Sea. However, the French authorities did not disclose the identity of the warship and helicopter involved in the interception mission. The Spile Naval Mission, a specialized group tasked with protecting cargo ships in the Red Sea, established by the European Union, EU, reported that the incident occurred in the southern part of this maritime region. The commanding officer of the Spile campaign stated that the helicopter from the frigate was guided to the target area to shoot down the UAE UAV. Previously, the U.S. military also shot down an unmanned aerial vehicle, UAV, belonging to Houthi forces in Yemen, threatening maritime traffic in the Red Sea. In a recent statement, the U.S. Central Command announced that there have been no reports of damage or casualties to ships in nearby areas. Additionally, the U.S. military destroyed 5 surface vessels and 1 UAE UAV in areas controlled by the Houthi rebels in Yemen. Meanwhile, according to Amachira TV, the U.S. and British navies conducted 4 airstrikes on the port city of Hodeidah in Yemen. These airstrikes targeted the Dorahimi district in the southern part of the city, with no information available on casualties or damage. Since mid-2023, Houthi forces in Yemen have continuously carried out attacks using UAVs and missiles against international commercial shipping passing through the Red Sea, which they claim are in solidarity with Palestinians following conflicts between Israel and Hamas in Gaza in May last year. In response, the U.S. and British coalition forces have targeted Houthi military bases in Yemen, causing the conflict to expand to target commercial and naval vessels, including those of the U.S. On March 19th, a spokesperson for the Houthi armed group, ESI, claimed responsibility for launching naval missiles at the Motto, a U.S.-flagged fuel tanker, in the Red Sea. According to tracking companies monitoring maritime transportation, the Motto is a liquefied petroleum gas (LPG) carrier registered in the Marshall Islands en route to Singapore from Saudi Arabia. While the Houthi rebels claim the Motto belongs to the U.S., Shipping databases indicate that the vessel is owned by Nakoma Shipping and Trading Corp. Based in Greece. Additionally, on March 19th, Houthi forces launched missiles at the port and resort area in the city of Eilat, Israel. Citing two high-level U.S. officials, the Times of Israel reported that the United States will present alternative plans allowing Israel to continue pursuing Hamas without the need to launch a ground assault on Rafah. Previously, U.S. National Security Advisor Jesse Lever mentioned this idea during a discussion about a recent phone call between Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and U.S. President Joe Biden. In the call, the Israeli Prime Minister agreed with Mr. Biden to send a team to the U.S. to listen to American concerns regarding the planned attack on Rafah. The U.S. will also propose a different approach for Israel to strike key Hamas members in Rafah and protect the Egypt-Gaza border without a ground assault on Rafah. According to this approach, the U.S. wants Israel to focus on blocking arms smuggling from Egypt to Gaza through the Philadelphia corridor. The U.S. believes that if Israel reaches a new agreement with Egypt and establishes the necessary infrastructure to cut off the arms smuggling routes to Gaza, this method will be more effective in eliminating Hamas than a ground attack on Rafah. A U.S. official opined that an Israeli attack on Rafah, resulting in significant civilian casualties, would make it difficult to get Egypt's cooperation in sealing the Philadelphia corridor. U.S. officials stated that opposing a ground attack on Rafah does not mean opposing attacks on Hamas leaders in Rafah or elsewhere. The plan that the U.S. intends to propose to the upcoming Israeli delegation will focus on this goal. The U.S. also wants Israel to use the upcoming period to ramp up large-scale humanitarian support amid United Nations reports of an impending famine in northern Gaza. This means Israel will need to open additional land routes in Gaza to deliver aid to the north. The alternative plans the U.S. wishes to discuss with the Israeli delegation will also include efforts to rebuild Gaza and establish an alternative to Hamas. Both issues are controversial. According to a post-war plan for Gaza presented by Mr. Netanyahu, Israel would only rebuild Gaza after it is demilitarized and de-radicalized. However, Mr. Netanyahu also wants to empower local tribal leaders with no ties to the Palestinian Authority to replace Hamas's governance of Gaza. Yet this idea is not welcomed by the U.S. and the international community, who prefer the Palestinian Authority's return to govern Gaza. In an exchange with the Times of Israel, both U.S. officials emphasized that the U.S. is not ignoring the remaining 4 Hamas battalions in Rafah, but believes Mr. Netanyahu has overstated the strength and importance of overthrowing Hamas. Meanwhile, the Office of Prime Minister Netanyahu announced that he had sent his 2 most trusted aides, Minister of Strategic Affairs Ron Dermer and National Security Advisor Tuyachi Hanibi, to lead the Israeli delegation to the U.S. White House spokesperson Kari Ginby announced that the meeting between the Israeli delegation and the U.S. could take place soon. Over the past months, the U.S. has clearly stated it only supports an attack on Rafah if Israel presents a reliable plan to protect the over 1 million civilians taking shelter there. U.S. officials believe no plan can guarantee this. Mr. Netanyahu stated that the Israeli military would evacuate civilians to areas north of Rafah before starting the campaign, and announced he had approved the plan to attack Rafah. The plan to attack Rafah has been a point of contention between Israel and the U.S. for months. Rafah is the last part of the Gaza Strip that Israeli ground forces have not entered en masse. The Israeli campaign to attack Rafah seems to be an effort to pressure Hamas into agreeing to a hostage deal currently being negotiated, under threat of potential destruction. On March 19th, the Israel Defense Forces, IDF, announced the decision to establish the Heharim Brigade, a new civilian defense unit tasked with conducting cross-border operations against Lebanon and Syria amidst escalating tensions due to the ongoing conflict in the Kaya Range. Under the command of the 210th Division, the Heharim Brigade is responsible for responding to the situation at Israel's northern border and gathering intelligence. Colonel Liron Appelman will command the newly established brigade, which will become operational in the coming weeks in the disputed areas of Mao Hermon, also known as Japan Aji, and Mao Dop, known as the Sheba Farms. Both regions have long been hotspots of violence due to territorial disputes and are now under the jurisdiction of the Hermon Brigade, number 810 of the IDF. The new brigade is tasked with specializing in combat in difficult terrains and mountainous regions along Israel's borders with Lebanon and Syria, areas that have seen wars in the past, some directly related to the Palestinian issue. To date, Israel remains in an official state of conflict with both neighboring countries, with hostilities reaching a peak due to the recent conflict in Gaza. In its latest military action, the Israeli army launched a fierce missile attack on Syria while intensifying airstrikes in southern Lebanon. Syrian state news agency Sana reported that Israeli forces in the Golan Heights fired an unspecified number of missiles towards the southeastern Damascus region. Sources confirmed that Syria's air defense systems intercepted some of the incoming missiles, but the attack still resulted in one soldier injured and some material damage. Meanwhile, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, based in the UK, reported that the airstrike targeted 2 military sites in the Kalamoun Mountains southeast of Damascus. This was reportedly the second such Israeli airstrike on Syrian territory in 2024. In addition to the Syrian front, the Israeli military conducted at least 4 airstrikes on 4 locations in southern Lebanon. The IDF stated that the targets were military structures and observation posts of the Hezbollah movement. The airstrikes were in response to an increased rocket fire from Hezbollah from southern Lebanon to northern Israel. Since October 8, 2023, tensions along the Lebanon-Israel border have escalated after the Hezbollah group in Lebanon fired dozens of rockets towards Israel in support of Hamas' attack. On March 17th, Lebanon News reported that the conflict between Israel and Hezbollah in the southern Lebanon border region had indirectly caused USD 350 million in damages. According to Lebanon News, the damage included partially or completely destroyed homes and infrastructure, and approximately 10 million square meters of agricultural land and forests were burnt.